the speed. Touchdown.
Welcome into Mac and Mose. Andy McNamara, joined by the editor-in-chief of GoDucks.com, Rob Moseley. We are here. It's week number 1 of preseason camp, still called fall camp by a lot of people. I like to think of it still being summer.
I'm going to cling to that. Yes, it is the summer still.
Especially since we have giant sombreros that we wear out at practice to shield us from the sun. So it's been warm this week. It's been Oregon practice. The tempo is there. The activity, the constant movement on the field. It's what we have come to expect from this team.
Yeah, if you've been reading the practice reports we've been putting out, kind of, Monday there was definitely a little sense of kind of showing the new guys how to practice. I mean, the thing that jumped out to me is they're doing their pre-practice stretch, which always includes a jumping jacks in unison, and Marcus Mariota yelling out, "Does everyone know how to do a jumping jack?" It's like, you're covering the fundamentals when you're making sure everybody knows how to do a jumping jack. But they got it, then they moved on, and now it's routine. I mean, by Tuesday, it just felt like another practice. Yeah, like you said, the tempo was there, the intensity was there, and they didn't even have pads on at that point. And they put the shells on Wednesday, started doing a little more hitting. The defense makes its presence felt a little more. Some running yards were harder to come by. So it's 4 days in. These guys are already just well into the swing of things.
Well, we talked about it in the preview of fall camp about watching out for the newcomers and kind of being excited about seeing who's going to stand out. Well, Royce Freeman, the big running back. Yeah. Coach Helfrich called him a 64-star recruit, which I think is a record.
But also the world's worst monkey roller, which is another drill they do. They do like kind of this 3-man weave involving monkey rolls at the start of practice, and apparently Royce was slow to take to it. But so he's not perfect, but he looks pretty good so far.
Without the shoulder pads on, everybody kind of, I think, probably looks a little bit quicker, or they break away more than they would otherwise. But for a big guy, he's got great feet, great moves. You mentioned to me after day 1, if Oregon had to use this guy as their feature back, they're going to be just fine.
Yeah, somebody asked me on Twitter the other day, in 2 words, how would I describe Freeman's impact so far? And the 2 words I picked were 3 deep. I mean, I think this team legitimately goes 3 deep now with Marshall, Tyner, and Freeman, with Pac-12 quality backs, and he's got a lot to prove. But so far, I mean, he just very much fits in with other guys who've been here, a year or 2 or 3 more.
And one of the things that stood out to me on day 1 as well, you expect him to be a running back, but his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, his hands, he secures it. I mean, it's a natural sort of flow when he receives the ball. And that's just an extra bonus dimension, I think, for such a young guy.
Right. Yeah. You look at the way the Ducks have used Byron Marshall and Thomas Tyner in the spring and the fall. They want their backs to be versatile so that they can use them, 2, maybe 3 at a time. Who knows what they're cooking up? But Kenny Bassett's another guy who can do both things really well: catch the ball and also run with it. And so Freeman's ability to do that is a signal that he can fit in all the different ways that Oregon wants to use its running backs. If you're one-dimensional, you're probably limiting yourself in terms of how much you can help the team and ways they can use you. If you prove that you can do what everybody else can, suddenly you're an option to be an every down guy if it ever came to that.
Yeah, just the running backs group alone, when you watch them practice, you add in Tony James. Yeah. Charles Nelson is a guy that Coach Helfrich actually talked about a little bit on Media Day as a guy that might be able to help this team right away. And the depth there is very impressive. We don't want to just concentrate on running backs. Touch on a few other new guys that have kind of stood out to you so far in these first couple days.
Well, you mentioned Nelson, and I think at receiver you've got Nelson and Jalen Brown, a couple of true freshmen. Even though Jalen was here in the spring, so he almost feels like a veteran a little bit. Compared to some of the truly new guys, but I think both those guys potentially could be in the mix. There's a lot to sort through at receiver, and I think they remain options. Nelson is so quick off the line. His first step, I was watching receiver reps the other day, and he went, and Devin Allen went right after. And Nelson is so much quicker off the line than the U.S. 110-meter hurdles champion. Now, anybody who watched Devin race in those big races knows he's not the quickest guy out of the blocks. But once he gets his head of steam up, there's no slowing him down. He's such a strong runner. Whereas Nelson is kind of a different kind of runner, like that electric, quick feet right off the line. I'm not sure who would win the 100 dash between the two of them, but you know, when you can compare favorably in any way to a U.S. champion in track and field, you're doing pretty well. So I think he's a guy that could be a factor, particularly if they think he's an option to return punts. Jaylen Brown, a guy who's catching a lot of passes, although Dwayne Stanford's catching everything thrown his way. We've seen Chance Allen make a few catches. Darren Carrington is catching a lot of balls. So again, a lot to sort through there. I think Jimmy Swain at linebacker, you know, given some of the attrition over the offseason, remains a guy where if he can pick up the defense enough, could help. Certainly could be a factor on special teams. We've seen him on punt coverage at least. And Tyrell Crosby, you know, Steve Greatwood has not been afraid to use true freshman offensive linemen in the last couple of years. You know, Jake Fisher and Cameron Hunt last year being the most recent examples. Crosby, Wednesday when the pads went on, had a really good practice. He had a pancake block in a team situation. He more than held his own in one-on-one pass rush drills. A big athletic guy. You know, it wouldn't shock me if Steve Greatwood thought he was a guy who could help the depth at tackle enough to at least travel and maybe even get on the field a little bit.
As far as the veterans go, Marcus Mariota is back for Oregon, and you know it's beating a dead horse. Probably talking about, you know, how polished and you know just how big of an asset he is to this team.
NFL ready, you could even say.
I would have to say that. You know, I have not been on the sidelines for NFL training camps, but you watch this guy throw the ball, and a lot of people talk about his speed and his dual threat ability, but he has a cannon for an arm. I mean, he has an NFL arm. He's putting it on display out there every day.
And throwing on the run.
Yeah,
he still can put that kind of juice on it.
Yeah, I mean, there was a play the other day where he hit Devin Allen right on that shoulder pad, and he probably knocked the wind out of it. It went right through his hands, and he you know, recovered and made a couple nice plays after that. But you know, those guys are going to have to get used to maybe a little bit stronger ball coming from the quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he's gotten noticeably bigger, stronger over the last year in the shoulders and everything. I mean, he's definitely firing it in there even more. I was struck watching Ifo Ekpe-Olumu out there the other day. I mean, in both those cases, the presence they have, I mean, that's such a luxury for this Oregon team to have those guys back here. And I'm sure Hronis Grasu too, although, you know, in the middle of the line, it's sort of harder to see him stick out. But, you know, just to see guys who very easily could be in an NFL camp right now because they're that talented and that mature, and to be impacting this team, which is going to need a lot of young guys to contribute to it, is just a huge luxury. I mean, this is the coach. We've seen a lot of examples. Coaches need the veterans to be leaders, and in a hands-on way in these practices, kind of showing new guys what to do. And so to have guys around like that is just a huge luxury.
To see how effortless it is for them to go through a 2-hour practice. A 2-hour Oregon practice. You have some of the new guys after the first 10 minutes with hands on hips, you know, that are really, you know, struggling to keep up. And Ifo and Marcus are just gliding all over the field. And Hronis to some extent too. Tyler Johnstone, Jake Fisher, these big linemen that, you know, they're so conditioned now.
Right.
And you know, that I think that certainly speaks to their veteran status, but also just the commitment they have to try to, you know, become the best team that this team can be. Which leads me into the next point. You brought it up yesterday when you spoke with Christian French after practice on one of our Facebook interviews about how you noticed he took someone aside and sort of coached them up a little bit on the sideline. And we've seen a lot of that from veterans so far through the first 3 days, where on their own they're taking the young guys and they've seen a mistake maybe or something that they didn't understand and pull them aside. Farrell Brown took a young tight end aside yesterday. Same sort of deal. Coach isn't not right there asking them to do it. They're doing it on their own. And I think that shows a level of maturity and commitment that has to be real exciting for fans.
Yeah, these guys practice so much. The whole, sort of the overgeneralized version of what Oregon does with its practice pace is just rep, coach them up later in the meetings. Just run as many reps as you can, get them on film, and then you can review the film and go over the techniques that you need to fix later in the day. Well, when you have veterans that are able to jump in and show a guy something in practice, now you're repping, but you're also getting some of that coaching on the field as well. You know, Christian French, during a special teams drill, grabbed, I think it was Jimmy Swain, who I mentioned earlier, and was showing him a technique on one of the punt teams. Terrell Crosby was doing those pass rush reps that I was mentioning earlier, and Jake Fisher after one of them. You know, Crosby, to my eye, had won the rep, and still Fisher had something he could show him about his technique. I think it was where his hand placement was. I think he thought Crosby's hands were a little wide. You know, he wanted him to get him a little more up, right into the middle of the pads. And you know, so yeah, you know, even though Crosby had been generally successful in that rep, you know, there were still ways to perfect it that a veteran saw. And Steve Graywood couldn't take the time to show him that because he's moving on to the next rep. There's already other players flying around going through the drill. So you know, when you can do all the reps and get some coaching from your veterans, you know, that's huge. That'll really help those younger guys get up to speed quick.
Well, one more day in shells for this team, and then they go full pads on Friday. That's when I think, you know, coaches will have a little bit better idea of what they have to work with in terms of the newcomers. You're not going to see as many breakaway touchdown runs and that sort of thing when they're all padded up and they're able to really go at it.
Yeah, you know, Monday, Tuesday, there were so many runs that looked really great, but you wonder, hey, if they'd been live action, would a linebacker have come across and just flattened the guy before he ever got the chance to get past the second level? So, you know, as Mark Helford says, you know, they're sort of playing fake football right now. They're going to start playing real football really soon. Double days start Saturday. You know, a week in, it'll already feel like sort of the dog days of training camp. But, you know, it's 90 degrees out there. It's been muggy. There's some smoke in the air off and on from some of the forest fires that are going on in the region. You know, these are not, you know, it's not 98% humidity in Florida. It's not 110 degrees in Arizona. But for what these guys are used to, these are pretty extreme conditions, and they're having to battle through it.
Well, we'll have more for you after those padded up practices and break it down a little bit more as camp continues. August 30th is rapidly approaching, South Dakota, and then of course Michigan State, game number 2, and already lots of national buzz surrounding that matchup. So until next time, if you want to get at us and ask us any specific questions that we can maybe either answer via Twitter or put as a part of Mac and Mose here, please contact us. I'm at McNamara UO. He is at Duck Football. We'll see you next time.
Gets the corner into the end zone for the touchdown. It's through 50. He's got the speed. Touchdown.